My name is Emily. I am 26 years old. I live in a small town. I work at a supermarket. My life is quiet now, but it was not always like this. When I was 19, I met Jake. He was 21. He worked in a garage. He fixed cars and trucks. He had short brown hair and a strong voice. He smiled a lot. He made me laugh. I liked him from the first day. We met at the bus stop. It was raining. I forgot my umbrella. He had one. He said, "You can share with me." I smiled. I said, "Thank you." We stood close under the umbrella. He asked my name. I said, "Emily." He said, "I'm Jake." That moment stayed in my heart. After that day, we saw each other again. We took the same bus. He sat next to me. We talked. He made me feel happy. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. He texted me every day. He said, "Good morning, Emily." He said, "Sweet dreams." I waited for his messages. They made me smile. After 2 weeks, we went for a walk. It was sunny. We walked by the lake. He held my hand. My heart beat fast. He said, "You are kind." I said, "You are funny." We liked each other. After 1 month, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. I was so happy. He was my first love. We met every weekend. We talked for hours. We went to the park. We ate ice cream. We watched movies at his house. His mother was kind to me. His father was quiet, but nice. Jake liked music. He played songs in the car. He sang with me. We danced in the kitchen. I felt safe with him. I thought, he is the one. After 1 year, we said, "I love you." I said it first. I was scared, but Jake smiled. He said, "I love you too." I cried a little. I was full of joy. My parents liked Jake. My mom said, "He is good for you." My dad said, "He works hard." I felt proud. But after 2 years, things started to change. Jake texted me less. He didn't call in the morning. He came late when we had plans. He said, "I'm busy." I said, "It's okay." But I missed him. One time, I waited at the park. He didn't come. I called him. He said, "I forgot." He didn't say sorry. I went home and cried. Later, he was quiet when we met. He looked at his phone. He didn't ask about my day. He looked tired. He smiled less. He didn't hold my hand. I asked, "Are you okay?" He said, "I'm fine." But I felt the distance. I felt like I was alone. One day, I made lunch for him. I made pasta. It was his favorite. He came late. He didn't eat much. He said, "I'm not hungry." I said, "Is something wrong?" He didn't answer. I tried to make him happy. I wore my best dress. I gave him small gifts. I sent sweet messages. But he didn't care. One weekend he said, "I want to be alone." I said, "Why?" He said, "I need time." I felt cold inside. I didn't sleep that night. He stopped coming to my house. He stopped asking me to visit. I waited for him. I looked at my phone. No message. No call. One day, I asked, "Do you still love me?" He looked away. He said, "I don't know." My heart broke. The next week, I saw him with another girl. They walked together. They laughed. I stood far. I watched them. I didn't cry. I just stood there. Later that night, I texted him. I said, "I saw you today." He didn't reply. I waited. I cried alone in my room. After 2 days, he came to see me. He said, "Emily, I want to end this." I said, "Why?" He said, "I don't feel the same." I asked, "Is there someone else?" He said nothing. He looked down. I said, "Please don't go." He said, "I'm sorry." Then he left. I sat on the floor. I felt empty. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I looked at the door. I waited for him to come back. But he didn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I looked at the window. The stars were bright. My heart was heavy. My eyes were full of tears. In the morning, I went to work. I didn't talk much. My coworker Sarah asked, "Are you okay?" I smiled and said, "I'm fine." But I was not fine. Every day, I thought of Jake. I remembered his smile. I remembered our first walk. I remembered his songs. I missed him. I stopped eating well. I didn't laugh. I didn't dance. I just worked and went home. I sat on my bed and looked at the wall. I felt small. My mom asked, "Did something happen?" I said, "No." I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want her to worry. Weeks passed. Jake didn't call. He didn't text. I looked at his name on my phone. I wanted to call, but I didn't. One night I looked at our photos. I touched the screen. I whispered, "Why did you change?" I cried again. I told myself, "You must move on." But my heart said, "Not yet." I started to take short walks. I listened to music. I talked to Sarah more. I smiled a little, but my heart still hurt. I wanted to forget Jake, but I couldn't. Not yet. He was my first love. He gave me sweet memories, but he also gave me pain. I didn't understand why he changed. I didn't understand why he stopped loving me. But I knew one thing. I loved him with all my heart. And now, I had to learn to let go. Before I continue my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? Sometimes I wonder if someone out there really understands me. Just knowing you're here gives me strength. The days were long. The nights were quiet. I still missed Jake. I missed his voice. I missed his smile. But he was gone. He didn't call. He didn't visit. He didn't ask how I was. I tried to stay busy. I worked more hours. I cleaned my small home. I watched TV, but I didn't laugh. I didn't feel happy. I just felt empty. One afternoon, I went for a walk. The sun was warm. The sky was blue. I saw people holding hands. I saw couples talking. I felt alone. I looked at the ground. I walked slowly. I didn't want to go home. At work, I smiled at customers. I said hello. I said thank you. But my smile was not real. My heart still felt heavy. My coworker Sarah stayed kind. She brought me tea. She asked, "Want to talk?" I always said, "Maybe later." But I never talked. I kept it inside. One Sunday, I stayed in bed. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to move. My pillow was wet. I cried again. I thought of our first kiss. I thought of our last words. I whispered, "Why did it end?" I looked in the mirror. My face looked tired. My eyes looked sad. I didn't feel like Emily. I felt like someone else. Someone small. Someone broken. My mom came to visit. She brought apples. She said, "You look pale." I said, "I'm just tired." She looked at me for a moment. She hugged me. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. At night, I made soup. I ate a little. I looked at Jake's old photo. I said, "You were my first love." Then I put the photo in a box. The next day, I went to the park. I sat on a bench. The wind was soft. A boy played with a dog. A girl ran to her father. I watched them. I smiled a little. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I thought, I want to feel better. I want to heal. Later that week, Sarah said, "Let's go for coffee." I said yes. We went to a small place. We talked about work. She told me a joke. I laughed. It felt strange, but good. I told her, "Jake left me." She touched my hand. She said, "I'm sorry." I looked at her. I said, I loved him so much. She said, I know. I felt warm. I felt safe. That night I slept better. My dreams were quiet. My heart was still sad, but not as heavy. I started to eat more. I walked every morning. I smiled at the sun. I waved to my neighbor. I listened to music again. Not sad songs, just soft ones. One day, I saw Jake's name on my phone. He sent a message. He said, "How are you?" My hand shook. I didn't know what to say. I looked at the message. I waited. Then I typed, "I'm fine." That was all. He replied, "I miss you." I didn't reply. That night, I thought a lot. I asked myself, do I want him back? My heart said yes, but my mind said no. I remembered the pain. I remembered the silence. I remembered the way he left. I said to myself, I must protect my heart. The next day, I blocked his number. I felt pain, but I also felt strong. I said, I need to move on. At work, I smiled more. I talked to people. I helped Sarah with boxes. She said, "You look better." I said, "I feel better." One weekend, I took a bus to the lake. I walked by the water. I sat under a tree. I watched the birds. I felt calm. I took a photo of the sky. I smiled. I didn't think of Jake. I just felt peace. The days passed slowly, but I changed. I felt new. I didn't cry every day. I didn't wait for messages. I didn't feel lost. One night I stood in front of the mirror. I said, "You are still Emily. You are strong." I touched my face. I smiled. My first love was gone, but I was still here. I was still alive. I still had dreams. I wanted to travel one day. I wanted to learn to paint. I wanted to feel happy again. Sarah and I went to the movies. We laughed. We ate popcorn. I forgot my sadness for a while. I felt like myself again. A man held the door for me. He smiled. I said, "Thank you." He said, "You're welcome." That small moment felt nice. I didn't want a new love yet, but I wanted to live again. I wanted to feel joy. One morning, I opened the window. The air was fresh. The sky was pink. I said, "Thank you, world." I felt hope. That day, I wore my favorite dress. I brushed my hair. I looked in the mirror and smiled. Emily was back. Not the same Emily, but a stronger one. Time went by. The pain was still there, but it was softer now. I didn't cry every night. I didn't wait for a message. I didn't ask why anymore. I just lived each day. I still worked at the supermarket. I said hello to customers. I helped them find things. I smiled more. People noticed. One man said, "You look happy today." I said, "Thank you." Sarah and I became close friends. We had lunch together. We talked about small things. I liked that. I didn't need big things. I just needed peace. Some evenings I sat by my window. I watched the sky change colors. I drank tea. I listened to soft music. I felt calm. One Sunday, I saw a small dog in the street. It looked lost. I walked to it slowly. I said, "It's okay." The dog wagged its tail. I smiled. I picked it up and took it home. I named him Max. He was white and brown. He followed me everywhere. He sat near me when I was sad. He licked my hand when I cried. He didn't ask questions. He just stayed. Max helped me heal. I walked with him every morning. He made me laugh again. I talked to him like a friend. I said, "Max, you are good for me." My mom came to visit. She saw Max. She smiled. She said, "You look better now." I said, "I feel better." She hugged me. One day, I saw Jake in town. He was with another girl. He looked at me. I looked back. I gave a small smile. He didn't say anything. I walked away. My heart didn't hurt. I didn't feel broken. I felt strong. I felt free. That night I looked at the stars. I thought, I loved him, but he was not my forever. I closed my eyes. I let go. Weeks passed. I joined a painting class. I always liked colors. I didn't know how to paint, but I wanted to try. The teacher was kind. She said, "Just paint what you feel." I painted a tree. It was strong. It had deep roots. It had green leaves. I looked at it and thought, this is me. Sarah came to see my painting. She said, "It's beautiful." I said, "It feels like my story." She smiled. She said, "I'm proud of you." One evening, I got a call from an old friend. Her name was Rachel. We went to school together. She moved to another city years ago. She said, "I'm back for a few months. Let's meet." I said yes. We met at a cafe. We talked about the past. We laughed. She said, "You look happy, Emily." I said, "I feel new." Rachel told me about her job. She said, "I work at a school now. I help kids read." I said, "That sounds nice." She said, "You would be good at it too." I said, "Maybe one day." After that, I thought about my future. I didn't want to stay in the same place forever. I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. I started to read again. I read short books. I learned new words. I wrote small notes to myself. I wrote, "You are strong." I wrote, "You will be okay." I read those words every morning. One day my manager at work said, "You help people well. You have a kind heart." I said, "Thank you." I felt happy. At the end of the month, I took a short trip to the sea. I walked on the beach. I touched the water. I watched the waves. I felt small, but in a good way. I felt like part of something big. I sat on the sand and looked at the sky. I thought about my story. I thought about Jake. I thought about the pain. But I also thought about my healing. I thought about Max. I thought about Sarah. I smiled. I said to myself, love hurts, but it also teaches. I was not the same girl. I was not the same Emily who cried every night. I was still quiet. I was still soft. But I was strong too. When I came back home, I opened all my windows. The air felt fresh. I cleaned my room. I moved old things away. I made space for new things. I painted again. This time, I painted a sky. It had blue and gold. It had light. It had hope. One morning, Sarah gave me a card. It was for a small class in town. A class to help people speak in public. She said, "You should try." I said, "I don't know." She said, "Just go once." I went. I sat in the back. I listened. Then I stood up. I spoke. I told a short story. My voice shook. My hands felt cold. But I did it. People clapped. One woman said, "You speak with feeling." I said, "Thank you." That night, I felt proud. I looked at Max. I said, "We did something brave today." Sometime later, a man came to my class. He sat near me. His name was Tom. He had kind eyes. He asked, "Is this your first time here?" I said, "No. I come often now." We talked after class. We walked to the bus stop. It was raining. He said, "Do you want to share my umbrella?" I smiled. I thought, life has strange ways. It started with an umbrella, and now, here again. But this time, I didn't fall fast. I didn't dream big dreams. I just smiled. I said, "Thank you." Tom and I met a few more times. We talked about music. We talked about food. We laughed. He didn't rush. He didn't push. He just listened. I told him, I had a hard time before. He said, "Me too." We didn't ask too much. We just enjoyed the little talks. I didn't know where it would go, but I felt calm. I didn't feel scared. One evening, I sat on my bed. I looked outside. The moon was full. Max lay next to me. My room was quiet. My heart was quiet too. I whispered, "We started with love and ended with silence." But I found myself again. And now I am not alone. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.